There we go. Can everybody hear us? What's up, Lynn?
Hi, guys.
I'm just running the board and trying to get everything going. It's impossible. All right.
Greetings, my fellow nuts. We are back.
Greetings and salutations.
Greetings and salutations. My fellow nuts.
Steve wants to know right off the bat, any estimate on when Curtis will be back? No. Although I did talk to him earlier this week. He is a busy little beaver right now. And he helped me out on something. But no, we do not have an estimate when he'll be back. But damn it, I need him back. Because this running the board and trying to talk and listen to Lindsay and listen to all your comments is damn near impossible. So, Todd is on. Hey, Todd.
This the Todd you sent me the email about?
Yes.
Woo!
The Dr. Todd we're going to have on the show down the road, hopefully. Anyway, we're in for a really big shoe today. You don't know. Never mind. I'm not going to go there because then we'd have to do it back in the day. Hello, I already got one in. There it is. Anyway, so we got a lot to talk about today, but before we do, I'm just letting everything sync up, making sure everything's working good. So there's a lot going on that we want to talk about today, but it's all under the umbrella of double standards, right? So we're going to be jumping around on different stories, a post Lindsay did, a video I posted, a video I'm going to be posting. But it's all in the context of the way society views certain things with regard to, let's say, an event or something that's going on or something in Lindsay's post case where two people are in the house doing the same thing, but they view it as one way for the women and another way for the men. And we're just kind of loosey-goosey. That's going to be the overall topic, but we're going to incorporate some of the other stuff underneath it just to kind of talk about it. It's going to be an interesting show. So Lindsay, jump in, say what you want to say.
So I am the problem again, although I'm not the entire problem, but I am at least partially part of the problem.
What else is new?
What else is new? But my latest Facebook post that came out, I think yesterday, it was a simple graphic. It was literally a mom and a dad side by side, and it said, "Not all childcare is mother-shaped." And I then proceeded to piss a whole bunch of people off that they all missed the purpose of the post. I had many, many women sit there in the argument and seem to claim that if you would do it for yourself, as just part of being an adult, like paying all your bills, well, then it can't be counted as parenting. I'm like, okay, well then by that logic, you can't count. Wait, it gets better. Okay, so if you're doing it for yourself as just part of being an adult, it doesn't count as parenting. Okay, well, there goes all of the cooking, all of the laundry, all of the cleaning, all of the chores, all of the things that mothers love to claim is parenting because you do it for yourself, right? As part of being an adult. And it's, again, another perception problem because I had all these women go, well, no, because they're nurturing, anything that has to do with the child, directly related to the child is parenting. I go, exactly. Thank you. You proved my point. Well, no, you did prove my point. You proved the point of the post because it's only considered childcare when the mother is the one doing it. If the father is the one doing it, it doesn't count.
And that's the way it's always been, right? They don't view anything that the dad does. I mean, he could change 100 diapers and she could change one, but her one counts more than his 100. And I say that as someone who's changed more diapers than any of you out there probably ever will, as we had 6 kids over the course of 10 years. I was changing diapers for 10 years, Lindsay. I just, I'm a pro at it, actually. But it's, again, it speaks to what we're talking about in the context of the whole show when you see that, it's actually very demeaning towards men and the value that they provide as fathers to their children, right? when you're going to say, well, he would do that anyway, or, in the context you were talking about, so it doesn't count, or it's the bare minimum, that famous phrase. But yet the women hold themselves up as, I should be on a pedestal because I nurtured the children. Well, he did too. That doesn't count, and it this has been going on for decades now, and it's led us to where we're at now. And we talk about this all the time. It's one of the largest reasons why men are not interested in having children anymore, because why have children when you're going to be told by the moms, women in general, feminists for sure, the courts, politicians, basically all of society, that what you do doesn't really matter.
Well, we were talking about the normal financial side, and this is something that I've been speaking on quite a lot lately, is that we love to talk about, and family court is a perfect example of this. We love to talk about, well, who took care of the child? And they're always like, well, mom. Okay, that's one half of parenting, but you can't bathe a child, feed a child, or clothe a child without money. So if the mom's not working or not working as much, whichever parent is buying those things, that is parenting. Like, there is a provisional side to parenting. And I finally got one woman to actually admit I had a point. I said, okay, let me tell you this, because you keep saying that it doesn't count if it's the financial side, it doesn't count, it doesn't count, it doesn't count. Would you tell a single mother with no help, dad's out of the picture, would you tell a single mother that her two jobs that she has to make ends meet, that the two jobs she works her ass off, is tired all the time, and she doesn't get to do the homework, she doesn't get to do like the Play-Doh, she doesn't get to do the Pinterest crap. Literally all she does is work so that she can put food on the table, make sure that her kids have, all the stuff they need. Would you sit there and tell her that that's not parenting? And she's like, well, of course not. And I go, there you go. You would call it parenting because she's providing for her child. So why is it parenting when a mother does it, but it's not parenting? It doesn't count, or it's just basic adulthood when dads do it. And I, of course, she was like, well, if you want to see it that way. I'm like, I win.
Yeah. Well, no, she wants to see it her way. And
Her
you
way.
it in her brain, right? And that's what happens when you start introducing logic, because women don't run on logic and reason. Lindsay, the exception that proves the rule, they run on emotions and feelings. And it's true if it makes me feel good, and it's false if it doesn't. So they short circuit when you confront them with reality, and it's, again, as I said, fathers do so much and it's all discounted. Well, you should have done that anyway. So should mom. Why is it any different, right? And the problem is this plays out in the courts as well. And we've talked about it before. Anyone who's gone through family court, you see this. When you walk into family court, there is a double standard against men and fathers that is there. And anyone who says there's not, especially the lawyers, are the ones that just piss me off with it, because they're in the court. They know damn well that there is, right? Real lawyers, ones who are, honest. Is there such a thing? I know. An honest lawyer will tell you right up front there's an absolute bias. And, having experienced it personally, having gone into court with hundreds of men over the years, talked with thousands, tens of thousands, so on and so forth. Almost universally, there are some exceptions, but almost universally, the mother will be presumed and accepted by the judge as a good parent until proven otherwise. The father, on the other hand, is the exact opposite, which is why, people like our friend David Pizarro, who is a good divorce attorney, will tell you, you have to be ready to go into court and prove that you've been a participating father, first of all, which is ludicrous, right? To your points, Lindsay, but also, that you're good. Whereas mom, by default, is automatically assumed and presumed to be. And, when you have that kind of a bias and stigma from day one, that's the reason why, more than anything else, I think, why 90% of the time, and it is over 90% of the time, mom is awarded primary physical custody. Everybody gets into who wins custody, and they throw in things like joint custody. Joint custody is a legal term that really has no meaning in terms of the household. What I mean by that is you can have joint custody and see your kids one time a year. All joint custody really gives you is the ability to have some say on education, medical, those type of things, right? It has nothing to do with who has the kids when. And so the most common standard order, as it's known, is, every other weekend, so 4 days a month, and usually as I call it, the pizza date, one night a week for dinner. But you can have joint custody, and when you look at the statistics, that's considered dad having equal custody, but it's not. It's not even close. And a large reason that all happens is that inherent bias and double standard that exists before you even walk in the courtroom.
Well, like someone out down in the TikTok comments is literally proving my entire freaking point on Facebook, is sitting there saying that parenting is presence. No, the fuck it isn't. How? Okay.
I think it's part of it.
It's part of it, but there are two parts of parenting. Like in my single mother example, if she can't be present to do homework. She has to, she can't be present in the home as much because she's working 2 jobs. Because what's going to happen to that kid if she doesn't work 2 jobs? You can't be you can either be present, or you can keep them fed, or you can keep a roof over their head, or you can keep all of the utilities on, or you can keep, them clothed, or their school dues, or like anything like that. That all takes monetary provision. So in many cases, we have this idea that the mother is present in the child's life more often than the father. And that is true in many cases. I know I'm present in my children's lives much more than their fathers before Mr. Squirrely. But I wouldn't be able to do that. I would not be able to be present if Mr. Squirrely didn't work his ass off. So the idea that he's an absent parent because he's not physically home with the children and therefore he's not doing his part is insulting. Because I wouldn't be able to take care of my children. I wouldn't be able to be present if he wasn't footing the bill for that. And this goes back to the point of my post. The only childcare that is accepted in society is mother shaped. So the nurturing, the actual being present, the bath time, the helping with the homework, all of that, that's all considered parenting. But the provision, the monetary side of that, which allows that parent to do that, and you can flip it, by the way. If mom is working more hours, the dad is the present one. But ironically, if it's flipped like that, the mother who is doing the traditional father's job of working outside the home and providing the bulk of the finance and bringing home the bacon, so to speak, if the mother is doing that and the dad is being present, guess what? They'll still call what the mother is doing parenting. But you flip it, and if dad is the one doing it, suddenly it doesn't count. And that's literally the whole point of my post, is we only count parenting when it's the mother doing it. And we forget that there's 2 sides to this. I can't be present in my children's life without all of the bills being paid. I can't be present for bath time. I can't be present for doing homework. I can't be present for staying home in case the school calls if my husband didn't work as hard as he did and does. So to sit there and say that he's an absent father because he's not physically in the home, excuse me? No, that's not how that works.
Let me take you to another example along what you're saying. So kids are up, 12 hours a day, 12 to 14 at the younger ages. Would you agree with that, somewhere in there?
Yes, somewhere in there.
Let's just say, for the sake of argument, it's 14, right? Well, if you're a working mom and dad, where's the kid go? Daycare. How long is the kid there at daycare? 9 hours? So if the kid's at daycare for 9 out of the 14 hours they're awake, then both of them would be, by definition, if you're going to make that argument, absent parents. Because daycare is the one raising the kids, not the parents. I mean, a bit of a stretch, I admit, but it's the same thing, really, right? You would never say that those are absent parents, though, right? But yet, follow the logic on it, you would have to. If you're going to say that dad's an absent parent because mom is doing the bulk of the work, and if mom's dropping the kid off to daycare, then she's an absent parent. especially a single mother, right? Because, daycare, it's not flat 8 hours. You've got to get to work. You got to do all this other stuff. So it's probably 8.5 to 9 on average. Now, I'm not knocking anyone that does that. Don't get me wrong. I'm trying to make the bringing this up to make the argument that that's not a fair argument to make. It's presence is it's physical presence, yes, but to Lindsay's point, it's presence in other ways, right? Are you doing what is necessary for the child to be happy and healthy? That to me is presence, right? So are you making sure there's a roof over their head, that they're not freezing in the winter or sweating in the summer, that they have clothes to wear, that they have food on the table, that they're getting an education. Whether you're doing that by being physically there with them or dropping them at daycare or whatever, off working 15 hours a day doing God knows what as a father, it all counts. But yet, to the point we're making with this whole show, women do not see it that way in general. And society, let me even say it's not just women, it's society in general, because men are as guilty of it in many cases as women are, right? They discount everything the father does. It's very similar to the whole housework debate. Well, loading the dishwasher counts, but spending, that takes 5 minutes, but 3 hours mowing the lawn doesn't, because it's not in the house.
Well, that came up as well, because of course they were talking about, well, mother has to do all of the dad stuff too. And I'm like, no, we're not playing this game. And they're like, well, dad needs to do more than just finances. I said, I didn't say, like, they tried to project every version of whatever they wanted.
They have this whole thing that they've created, and they will never get out of it.
It's a script, and they were responding to the script in their heads rather than what my actual point was. I literally was just saying, both mother's contributions and father's contributions should be acknowledged equally. And some people heard in the comments, oh my God, women should be in the kitchen all day and they're not allowed out, and the father should only provide financially. And I'm like, where did it say that? It's a picture. What are you on? What wrong? Like, are you okay?
What they're on is SRSRIs.
And they're responding to a predictable script rather than what my actual argument was. I actually, one woman, and this amused the crap out of me. She thought that I was trying to argue that mothers should stay in the home and only take care of the kids, like a 1950s housewife, and dads were just a paycheck. She goes, that's very misandrist. Like, you're a misandrist. Oh my God. I'm like, wait a minute. You came to a men's rights, equal shared parenting page, a woman who is an advocate for men, has been an advocate for men for 20 something years, and you're calling me a misandrist? Did you read my post, or are you just projecting stronger than the bat signal?
Well, they read it and then they interpret it the way it's going to benefit them.
Yeah, and that's what bugs me about arguing. And I'll say it. This will probably make me sound horrible. I'll say it. I would rather argue with a guy because at least he follows logic. Women, on the other hand, they will not look at the actual picture. They won't engage in the actual image. They project what they think is there, or they interpret it through a lens, that you only get to see it if you squint and like hop on one foot and look through like a full moon lens, and then it might bear a slight resemblance to the argument they're making, but not, really. And I went round and round and round, and I knew that there was no point in arguing with these there's 3 women in that comment that were the most egregious offenders. I knew there was no point in trying to change their minds. I wasn't trying to change their minds. I was, however, using them as useful morons, useful idiots, to basically show the logical fallacy of the argument here, that they're running off of a script rather than what I'm actually saying. But the woman the one, I think her name was Celine, that was saying that, you think that I'm endorsing a traditional, household view, and how horrible I must think of men, that they're only good for finances. I'm like, and ironically enough, the women who were the loudest dissenters in the comments accidentally were tripping over my point left, right, and sideways.
Well, again, they're reading between the lines, which women love to do, right? With everything. whereas guys go from A to B to C, women go from A to Z to N to 4. It's hi Zoe, say hi to everybody. But again, it gets back to how they're trying to discredit that anything that men do with regard, in this case, with regard to parenting. And what these women don't do that you and I both do is we hear what the men have to say about it, right? I hear all the time, or I see the videos of women saying, "Oh, I do it all. My ex didn't do a damn thing, blah, 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 blah." I throw the challenge out all the time. Then let me talk to your ex. Let me get his side of the story. And then we'll share it publicly. You okay with that? I've offered that thousands of times. Not one woman has accepted. Not one. Why? Well, because she's either exaggerating or flat out lying, and she knows it, right? And when I do talk to guys all the time about it, they're saying exactly what you and I are saying. They just discount anything I do. It's the bare minimum, or I don't do it right, so that doesn't count. That's the other argument we've talked about how many times, right? It just goes back to what we're talking about in general, which is there is an absolute double standard that exists against men and fathers with regard to relationships, parenting, the home in general, all of it. And we'll get into some other areas as well in a little bit, but just to kind of stay on point with this, the ultimate result of it is men are done with it, right? They know now, no matter what I do, I could be the best husband and father in the world. She'll never appreciate or acknowledge it. It's the number one thing I hear from guys by far. It's not even close. Nothing I say or do is ever good enough.
And another thing that came up in the comments, because it always comes up whenever we're talking about motherhood, is all the women were talking about how they have to parent their spouse. And I'm like, here's the thing about that. And I've been saying this for years, but women get married and he's perfectly fine. He's perfectly capable of taking care of himself before they get married. He's perfectly capable of taking care of himself in the early years of marriage, but then they have children and she makes motherhood her entire personality and she stops being a wife. And when she stops being a wife, she turns everything into, motherhood that becomes her entire personality, the sum total of her being. And that often leads women to mothering their spouse. And I'm sorry, but if you're a grown-ass adult and you get micromanaged like you're a 5-year-old, eventually, yeah, you're going to stop doing shit. I wouldn't be talked to like that because I'm not a toddler. And then the women will sit there and say, well, I have to micromanage him. Do you? Do you have to? Or did you choose to? And then you're upset when he doesn't respond like a toddler.
Oh, when they say that to me, Lindsay, I say, yeah, you're right. You do have to. Why? Because you're controlling and abusive. And that's their personality. Because that's what that is. If you're constantly demeaning him, saying he's doing something wrong, however, you didn't do this the right way, the way I want it done, that is a form of domestic abuse. And it ain't me saying it. It's the power and control wheel from the Duluth model. It's right in there. So if you're going to sit there as a wife and say, well, I have to parent him, what you're admitting to is that you're a domestic abuser, and they lose their shit when I say that. That's not what I'm doing. Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
It's exactly what you're doing. Because if he did that to you, he absolutely would be labeled a domestic abuser. And it goes both ways, honey. They lose their ever-loving minds when I say that. But that is what's going on. If I fold the towels a certain way and Lindsay folds them a different way, my way is not right or hers isn't right or wrong either way. It's the way we do it. Does the job get done? Yes. If I mow the lawn from left to right and you mow it from up to down, is the lawn mowed? Yes. Who gives a shit, right? Unless you're anal like me and like patterns in your lawn, but that's a different story. But then that's on me to do it. Who am I to say, well, Lindsay, you didn't mow it the way I wanted you to, so it doesn't count. Bullshit, right?
Well, I mean, I've used this argument before. This always melts women's mind. I'm like, well, the person who likely taught him how to do that was his mother. So I dare you to go tell your mother-in-law that you taught him wrong. See what happens.
Yeah, what they don't want to do.
And they don't want to do that. But like, all roads lead to Rome. There's more than one way to skin a cat. As long as the job gets done to a standard that if you've both agreed upon, and that's another thing, it has to get done to a standard you have agreed upon, not that the woman has just dictated and decided that's the standard now. And it comes down to power and control, and it's emotional and psychological abuse is exactly what it is. And if you're absolutely correct, if that were done to them, like if a boss were to sit there and micromanage a woman in an office setting, his ass would get written up for harassment or aggressive behavior.
But Lindsay, to that point, women are more willing to allow that to happen. They'll let a boss manipulate and do the things.
They'll let a boss do that, but they won't let a husband do that, which is
especially a female boss, by the way.
Bizarre.
It is. It's I am not going to let my husband control me. You'll let your boss do it, though. That's different. How? Well, he's paying me.
Well, if you're a stay-at-home mom,
guess what? You're getting paid. Okay, which is a whole other argument, But that's the point. And what's happening, and it's they're talking about it in the comments a little bit, is this is what's, I think, driving men away from relationships more than anything else, is all these women on social media saying the stuff we're talking about. And men are like, F this. Why bother anymore? Nothing we do is appreciated. It's never acknowledged. It's never good enough. It's never going to change from that. It's always going to be considered the bare minimum, if that. And I'm getting nothing in return except grief. Why should I bother? And this isn't a new concept. I got into it a little bit. I did go a little troll hunting this weekend because, every once in a while I have to. And, this woman's coming at me and I'm like, well, women are the ones walking away. First of all, my response is, yeah, and so what? Go ahead. We don't care. And when I deflated her on that because she wanted that to be her little power move, and I'm like, honey, whether you leave or men leave, men come out ahead either way. So it's a win-win for us. So we don't really give a shit who's the one leaving. Blah, 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 right? And then she went into, well, women are leaving because blah, blah, blah. And I said, men have been leaving for 20 years. The term is called MGTOW. That's different. No, it's not. It's exactly what it is. Women have now co-opted it to try and cope with the reality that men are done with them. And now they're claiming they are, so they can save face and feel better about themselves. That is the reality. And as I just said, it doesn't matter to men. It's not a contest to us. You women, you want to say you left? Good. We don't care. It makes you feel strong and independent. We just don't give a shit. Because either way, we get to keep our stuff. We don't have to put up with your misery all the time. We don't have to listen to your constant harpying at us. And that's why men are done and walking away. And more of them are. And it's sad. I don't say that as a good thing. It's destroying our society. Society's falling apart more and more by the day. It's now exponential. And it's directly related, I think, going back really 50 years, but more so in the last 20 years, even the last 10 to 15 on social media came into play more. And men saw what women were saying behind the scenes to each other. Now they do it publicly and they're proud of it. And they're like, F this, I ain't bothering anymore. I'm out.
Well, so often the women will sit there and say, well, we're leaving. And I'm like, goodbye. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. And I wouldn't advise a man to touch you with a 10-foot pole. And they get angry because they're so convinced that they're the prize, that they're, some diamond that's walking away and you don't get to touch the diamond anymore. I'm like, you're not a diamond, sweetie. You're an albatross around their neck. You're a millstone, and they're cutting off the weight. And good riddance. You don't want to stay, but you make yourself very hard to want. And the men don't want you because you're a horrible person. You're a vindictive, belligerent shrew. That's me being nice for TikTok, by the way.
Well, I mean, just kind of put a little button on this one before we keep the same topic going, but shift it to a different style. I want to share a comment that Angel put up. because we were talking about custody battles. Now it's going to change on TikTok, so bear with me because I have to make sure part of my camera shows on TikTok. Angel said it took my ex threatening suicide in open court for the courts to finally grant me full-time parental custody. Short of physical abuse or something like that, like I said, it's less than 10% of the time dads get physical custody to any length of time. And that's the problem. And it goes inherently to the bias that exists. And anyone who says there is no bias, I defy you to go sit in family court, and as I have many, many, many times, not just for my cases, on behalf of other men or just to observe. You want an eye-opening experience. Remember, family courts are open to the public. The only time they'll close them is occasionally for criminal cases that make their way into family court or adoptions, right? Other than that, and there are some other exceptions, family court's wide open. You can go sit in the gallery, keep your mouth shut, by the way, right? And just watch. And that's the first thing I tell any guy who's about to go through a divorce. Take a day off from work and go sit in family court because you're going to get your eyes opened. And better it happens that way than it did to me when I walked into court the first time. And, I'm sitting in front of a judge and then I got my eyes opened and I went, whoa, right? Learn ahead of time. And, personally, I would love to see every boy in high school, let's say junior year, have a field trip to family court so they can see what goes on. You think marriage is dying now? That would be the end of it once and for all.
Well, I argue that the people who sit there and say there's not a bias are the ones who directly benefit from there being a bias. So basically, they're sitting there saying, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain because they benefit from that system, either with societal clout, victimhood points, or they can even benefit from keeping people ignorant. But we have all the studies that show that children do best and are the best well-rounded and have the least amount of behavioral problems going into adulthood when they have access to both parents. So going back to my Facebook post, the idea that we need to acknowledge the contribution of both parents because both parents are essential, we literally have the data for that. And yet, to the point about my post, dad's contribution, men's contribution is always ignored, or it's reduced to a paycheck. And we recognize that that's parenting in family court, apparently, but that's all he's good for. But still, I find it incredibly ironic.
Nope, we're back. I thought we were getting banned on TikTok. We're all right.
I find it incredibly ironic that family court, which is horrible, still acknowledges the financial burden of the father or financial burden of either parent, because there are some mothers that are on child support orders, not as many as dads by far. But even family court recognizes that there is a financial component to childcare and openly acknowledges it, versus the dumb women, or I'm going to call them dumb women, the damn women in my post are sitting there trying to argue that I'm the problem, guys. Yeah. That are trying to argue that the financial side, the dad's contribution, isn't parenting. And then again, with my example, I was like, okay, well, with the single mom, like if she's working 2 jobs, are you going to say that's not parenting? And they go, well, of course not. That's parenting. Okay, why is it parenting when the mother does it, but it's not parenting when the dad does it? And they can't answer that. Their eyes cross. They immediately throw out a straw man. They immediately change, to a red herring. They immediately change the goalposts because it is so ingrained within society to believe that the only form of childcare, the only childcare that actually counts, is when a mother does it. It doesn't matter if she's giving them a bath or if she's paying the bills. As long as a mother is doing it, that is considered childcare. But the minute a father does it, it doesn't count and might as well be invisible.
All right, we're about a half hour in. Let me put this thing up. Lindsay, you're already doing it. Thank you. If you're enjoying the show, show us a little love, give us a like, share this, make comments if you're not already. We are reading the comments. We will read some out loud, probably a little bit later on. We're here every Wednesday from 4 to 5:30. We talk about issues that men and boys face. Today, we're talking about double standards, and we're going to continue talking about that, but I'm going to shift the conversation. Lindsay does not know where I'm going to go either. So I put out a video today, which is out on, I think, most of my channels. It's not out on all of them because I know that wouldn't be allowed. TikTok, sorry. So what I talked about is another double standard, which is, and we got to be very careful how we phrase things here when it comes to corn versus romance novels. So, I knew I was going to surprise her with it just to get that face you're all seeing on the screen right now. All right. And what's interesting about it, right? So I did this whole video. You can check it out. Your best place probably go see it is on YouTube. It's interesting, and I knew it was going to get throttled, and it has been. I mean, I'm looking at it now; it's only got about 5,000 views, which is a fraction of what I normally get on YouTube. But it's an important point that I wanted to make because, and I've had a couple of women comment, which is why I wanted to kind of address that, saying, "I never thought of it that way, but you're right." I went, "You're damn right, I'm right." You know. There is this huge stigma about corn. And as I talk about in the video, if you want to watch it once in a while, who cares? I mean, it's normal, blah, blah, blah. I'm not trying to defend it, though. If you're watching it every single day, you might have a little bit of a problem. That's between you and your therapist, not for Lindsay and I to comment about. Whatever you think on that, that's fine. But if you don't have the exact same viewpoint about romance novels, which if you've ever opened one and read it, and I unfortunately have read 2 of them, oh my God, okay. And I'm not counting 50 Shades of Grey, by the way, which is the worst book I've ever written or read in my life. No, I didn't write it. I wish I had. I'd be a multimillionaire. And the worst movies I ever saw. When you look at that, there's a huge double standard, right? And I've had many men commenting on the video. And as I said, women who, one, they didn't see it that way. And I think in the guy's case, it's mostly because they've never looked in those books. They have no idea what's in them. Most guys have no clue. I didn't until about 10 years ago. And I had a client of mine, because I'm a trainer, and she would come in before our session, and I would, she would sit in our lobby and read her book. And I said, "What are you reading?" And it was, it was one of those classic ones, buff guy with no shirt on and the damsel in distress. And I said, "Can I see it?" And I just randomly opened it to a few pages. Oh my God. His throbbing, you know what? All right. Blah, 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 blah. Graphic detail. And my argument is, how is that any different than corn? Yes, one is visual, one is written, but they're designed for how men and women are. Men are visual. Women respond to emotion through the written word better. But women lose their minds when you point that out to them. Yet I would argue women are more addicted to those. And by the way, you got to throw in the Hallmark movies.
Bridgerton,
Netflix, all those movies. You got to throw in, I would argue, some of the reality shows, what's the Bachelor? I've never seen it. Stuff like that. That's all women's version of corn. It's different than the men's. I'll grant you that. And then the other argument I made out, and I'll bet you don't know this one, Lindsay, or maybe you do, is I did a little research. Do you know that 40% of the people who watch corn are women?
That I did know.
I did not know it was to that extent. I thought it was like 20. But I went and looked it up for multiple channels, I guess is what you would use. They all report it. It's somewhere around 40%. Yet men get lambasted for it. And women, total pass.
Well, I mean, like on the romance novel stuff. So I do sometimes publish under pseudonyms, or I'll write fan fiction. Because I am that nerdy, guys. I wave my geek flag.
By the way, it is mostly women who write them.
Oh, yes, God, yes. Wow. A lot of it is extremely problematic. Like I've seen movies too. And the movies are, dare I say it, more chaste than some of the shit I've read online.
Some of the stuff in those books I was talking about.
Even in published book, walk into Barnes and Nobles and go in like the paranormal urban fantasy section with werewolves and vampires and God knows what, and you open a book and you're like, oh my. I don't blush easily, but there are things that I blush reading them quietly in my head. I can only shudder to think about reading them out loud. And it is, in many cases, not only are they graphic as far as the act is concerned, but they are incredibly problematic when it comes to, because it's more of an emotion. I would say it's emotional corn versus physical corn. But what I have problems with in a grand majority of romance is that here's the problem. The guys know that the movies aren't real. The guys know that most women don't look like that.
Well, Lindsay, let me just put a caveat. Most guys know. There are some that don't.
There are some that don't, but most of them know that it's not real. Most of them are aware that, and once the video turns off, that's fine. They don't expect their real partner or the real women in their life to be like that. Women, on the other hand, the number of red flags. I'm sitting there reading a book going, red flag, red flag, red flag. This is the love interest, by the way, like the main guy that's supposed to be like this amazing person. No, he's got more red flags than the Chinese Communist Party. And the problem is that women cannot differentiate between this person is amazing on paper. No, they're not. They're only amazing because they're rich, they're wealthy, they're some kind of royal, or they're some kind of magical being. They're amazing on paper. But if a guy were to do that in real life, you would have his ass in jail for stalking or emotional abuse, or you would call him all, predators or incels. But the very behavior that they deride and disdain in real live men, they write about in their fantasy saying, this is what we want. Why can't men be like this in real life? Because the last time they were like that in real life, you put them in jail, Susan. Like, it bothers me because women are sitting there yelling at men saying, well, that isn't real, right? And I go, yes, for the most part, men realize it's not real. Y'all, on the other hand, y'all are sitting there talking about men and how, well, it sets up unrealistic expectations for women. I would argue that no, it really doesn't for the most part. However, the same is not true on the romance book side. It absolutely sets up unrealistic expectations, or worse yet, encourages women to accept abusive behavior and call it love if it's, intense enough. I still maintain to this day that if 50 Shades of Grey, if Christian Grey had been ugly and poor, it would have been an episode of Criminal Minds.
And it would have been, and it's I was scrolling through some of the comments that are, because there's a bunch of new ones on that video, but to your point about how men can differentiate, the argument I've often made, and I've had this discussion before with people, is that there are some men who cannot differentiate it. They think, so they go become Domino's pizza drivers because they think, that's what, literally they will do that, thinking they're going to get laid, right? Ain't going to happen. Nor, somebody mentioned about the stepdaughter things. That's never going to happen. That would be creepy as hell. But generally speaking, the overwhelming majority of men know there's a difference. And the truth of the matter is, if you actually sit and listen to them and talk to them with an open mind, they will tell you, yeah, it's fun to look at, but I would never be in a relationship with a woman like that. Right? They won't, and they won't. It's funny. I was watching YouTube, probably 6-7 months ago, and the guy was interviewing an ex corn star. And she was saying, I can't find a guy because once they find out what I did, they want nothing to do with me. And I will tell you, if she didn't admit it, if you were watching the interview, you would have no idea she was one, in her past. She looked like, Lindsay, like an average, normal, attractive woman, right? No idea she was an ex-porn star. Corn, sorry. Ooh, I said the P word. But she can't find anyone because she starts dating and eventually they find out because you're not going to hide it, right? And that tells you the difference. Now, conversely, and this is where I kind of wanted to go with it, women do read those novels, and I think they do take it to heart and expect every guy to be like Christian Grey, was it Grey? Whatever.
Gray or
Like somebody mentioned Outlander. I've never seen that show. Some guy in that one.
Jamie Fraser.
What is it?
His name is Jamie Fraser.
Okay, apparently he's like the perfect guy. I've never seen the show, so you can speak to that better than I can. And I mentioned a few other shows, where again these women. The one I always throw out is Virgin River, which is the most insipid, god awful effing show. My wife loves it and makes me watch it. Okay, which I don't mind because I know she enjoys it, but you can tell it's written by women because no guy talks like any guy on that show. But these guys are all perfect. When they make mistakes, oh, I'm so sorry, honey. It's all my fault. Let me get on my knees and beg for mercy from you. Blah, blah, blah. Right? But yet women watch that and go, that's the guy I want. And I deserve somebody like that. That is not normal guys. Okay. It's a fantasy that Hollywood has created. You mentioned 50 Shades of Grey guy. There's a host of them out there. Sex in the City, which is, to me, the ultimate corn show of all time. I did an article on Sex in the City. When did it first come out? Like 2003, in that era? Somewhere around there. I did an article shortly after it came out calling it that. And the editor just loved it. Now, this was prior to social media and all that. The amount of phone calls and letters they got off my article, he was loving it. He's like, oh, this is great, because it set people off, right? But that show is absolutely corn, right? You can have all the cosmos you want, but if you go and watch that show, and God, I watched a few of them, it sets very unrealistic expectations. Women are more likely to take that in and use that as the template for the guy they want. Whereas guys are the exact opposite with the corn actresses.
Well, I also think that I'm gonna tell on Mr. Squirrel here a little bit, but with boys, it also depends on how early you're exposed to it. Like if your first view of adult relationships is corn, well, then you have kind of a skewed perception. So like the way my father-in-law explained it to my son or my husband is what you do when you're a little bit older. I can't stop you, but he was very diligent in making sure that the first blush of romance that my husband and his brother had access to was not an unrealistic standard. Meanwhile, 50 Shades of Grey came out, which was based on a Twilight fan fiction, by the way, written by the worst author out there. Oh my God.
The book was printed with spelling errors and everything else. I cracked up.
It was almost as bad as its source material, Twilight, which I call them twitards.
It made $50 million.
I don't care. Okay.
But it shows the point, right?
But anyway, men like my father-in-law and me and my husband are careful to make sure that young boys are not exposed to that bad imprint, or so that they don't get the wrong impression from too young age. Meanwhile, when 50 Shades of Grey first came out, I was watching 6th grade girls read it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's their first like real romance novel. And I'm sitting there, I want to look at their mothers going, what the is wrong with you that you're letting them read this? I wouldn't let them read like the bodice rippers that you could get at the checkout aisle either, because yeah, that's a little bit more softcore, but it's still, like Julia Quinn, which is who Bridgerton is based off of, or Jude Devereaux. They're very, very, very mild. Nora Roberts are very, very mild compared to what's out there now. But I still wouldn't let a girl in middle school read those books, because then she has an unrealistic expectation for what her romance prospects are going to look like. Just like I wouldn't let a 10-year-old boy watch hardcore, corn. Because that sets up unrealistic expectations. So we understand, like dads uniquely understand that if they let their sons consume this too early, they'll have an unrealistic expectation set. But mothers are guilty of providing the unrealistic expectations to their very young, very impressionable daughters. And like we were talking about with the emotional side of the books, a lot of it is very, very problematic. The love interests are horrible people. In real life, those behaviors all belong to abusers, to
Yeah.
emotionally controlling men, to psychologically abusive men. And then girls read these books and they think this is what romance looks like. And then they go out and they try and replicate it in real life and they pick horrible men. And then they have the audacity to sit there and say that the horrible men are representative of all men. And I'm like, no, honey, you just chose way wrong. But the person that set them up, ironically, for that failure is not men, it was their own mothers. So we're the problem again.
Well, I mean, we all know about the sixes, right? Six pack abs, 6 feet tall, blah, blah, blah. Go read the romance novels. Every guy, 6 feet tall with 6 pack abs, 6 inches, where. That's where I think that comes from. It's straight out of the romance novels because there ain't no 5'4" guy. There's no short king in a romance novel. Well, now again, I've read 2 of them just because I was curious. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, Lindsay, because you've probably read hundreds. No, I'm kidding. But you correct me if I'm wrong in the audience. If there's
the closest to a short king you could get in like a romance type thing was Bill from True Blood.
And again, I have no point of reference for that, but when you look at like even within Hollywood, right? You look at somebody like Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is 5'5". When they film him, he's standing on boxes, so he looks taller compared to his co-stars, right? It's because he's trying to look taller. I would argue Tom Cruise, maybe not now, but back in the day, was a pretty good looking guy, right? But I think that whole mindset, 6 feet, 6 figures, blah, 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 comes straight out of that. And it's, to your point, it's being fed to younger girls from a young age. I would argue the Disney movies perpetuate it as much. Now, I'm not saying, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is corn, but the premise behind it isn't all that different, right? The prince is going to come, the perfect prince is going to come and save her, right? Sleeping Beauty or whatever. Although now Sleeping Beauty apparently is SA. When you see that and you see what's happening now, where the girls are now, that grew up on, say, Sex in the City or what is it, True Blood, you said? Again, I don't have
Twilight.
All that stuff came out, 10, 15 years ago for the most part? I mean, 50 Shades of Grey was, 2016, 15, somewhere in there. Those girls have now matured and are in their 20s. And who are the ones, for the most part, that are making those videos on the social media? That's the age group. The correlation is there. What I'd be interested to see is anybody studying it? And I'll tell you right now, the answer is no. No one, and they're not going to study it because they don't want to find the results, right? But it speaks to, again, what we're talking about in the show, the double standard that exists. If a girl reads 50 of those novels in a year, which is not a stretch, I don't think, it's not even one a week, that's not a problem. But if a boy, let's say he's 20 years old and he happens to observe a movie or two a couple times a week for 3 minutes, that's an addiction. What the hell just happened? God damn it. There. You did that, Lindsay, I think. But to my point, if some 20-year-old kid spends a couple of nights a week staring at the screen, trying to keep this polite, for 5 minutes, because usually at that age, it doesn't last more than 5 minutes, that's viewed as a problem. But yet these girls are consuming this stuff. Bridgerton, you mentioned. What is it? It's like top 5 show on, is it on Netflix? I forget.
Netflix. And it's just the latest one. If you look at all of these, fantasy shows to an extent, Game of Thrones had elements of it in it. The Tudors Rain. I can think of tons of shows that are, historical fantasy or themed,
Mhm.
towards women, that have all these, I'll never forget my husband. I was rewatching The Tudors in very first episode, and Mr. Squirrel came in at the wrong moment to a visual scene. He stopped and was like, "What are you watching?" Um, and I looked at him and go, "The Tudors." He goes, "With Henry VIII? That's not Henry VIII." I go, "Yes, it is actually, but the point is that there is the romance novel side, and then you have the visual side of it too, like the TV shows, right? Which is basically what, softcore. The
Essentially,
only the only real difference, is that in the male version of Corn, they're wearing little skimpy maid outfits. In the female version, they're wearing corset stays and Regency dresses. Literally the only difference. Um, and the double standard that exists, the men who consume that are, reviled. How dare you? You're
vilified.
setting vilified. You're what's wrong with society. It's setting unrealistic expectations for women. And then on the other side, as we've discussed generously right now, it's, well, the books are. I would argue that the books, the female side of this equation, is arguably doing more harm than the male side.
Oh, I totally agree, mostly because it's consumed more from what I can see, right? Um, you know, and because we're talking about romance novels, but again, we're going to go things like Country mentioned the Hallmark Channel. The whole channel is nothing but this. Now, are they nude? No, but it's the same concept behind it, right? You have to understand the concept that's going on here. It is the argument is made that corn creates unrealistic expectations in men. And I think generally speaking, that's not true. There are absolutely exceptions, okay? Um, but then they won't agree when I say the same thing applies to those novels, the TV shows, the movies, all this stuff. Well, that's totally different.
Well,
No,
it's
it's not.
it
It's a double standard.
it's emotional corn, because women are more
That's what
cerebral,
women
more
feed
emotional.
off of is the emotional.
Is the emotional side. Men feed off the visual. But also, like in shows like The Bachelor, for example, The Bachelor is a TV show about a man dating multiple women, watched by women who hate men who date multiple women. And it's like, make that make sense.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's a whole other. Well, we can go there for a little bit, right? It's again that your point is valid, and your point about I was going to say Grey's Anatomy, 50 Shades. Well, Grey's Anatomy is another bad one, but 50 Shades of Grey. He would be considered a criminal if he wasn't rich and super hot looking, right? Um, Again, they cannot. They being, I think, society in general, but women in particular, can't differentiate. And when you understand, as you just mentioned, that men are visual, when the visual's gone, they don't think about it. They have their 5 minutes of fun, I'll call it, and then it's off their mind. They're not sitting there going, oh, now, are there some losers out there that are going, yeah, I'm going to go become a Domino's driver because, right? Yes, there are some, but they are few and far between. They are fractions of a fraction of a fraction of 1%. But women in general are showing time and again that they have bought into it hook, line, and sinker. I mean, every video you see that a woman makes where she's got all these unrealistic expectations, my argument is she's been corrupted by either the shows, the movies, the novels. Somebody mentioned on my YouTube, in the comments on my YouTube, novellas.
Oh, telenovelas?
No, like they were saying written.
Oh,
I guess they're like
novellas?
short stories is
Yes, yes.
yeah, that are like extremely graphic. Never read one, so I don't know. Um, and they were talking about that, and because I didn't really mention them, because I didn't, be honest with you, don't know they exist even. But when you see that over and over again, and then you see it carrying forward, right?
Well, women carry it with them, but back to the double standards, the men are watching the visual, which I've watched many movies, and
Really? You're my digital daughter. You're not allowed.
The visual is not as graphic as the written. The written is beyond graphic. I can't even begin to describe how graphic it is. On TikTok, will get taken down. And these are written by women who sit there and tell the men who are watching the movies, "You're disgusting." And I go, "Honey, the smut you're reading is worse than the smut he's watching by a mile. Sit down and shut up."
Well, I'd also make the argument, and I think this is true across anything, not just what we're talking about, but the written word tends to stick more in your craw than the visual, right?
Yes, and women read about these things, and they read about these very bad, very horrible, problematic men, and they carry that description with them, and they expect to find those men in real life. But again, if they were to find those men in real life, they would not like that relationship because those men are abusive as all get out. But they're also holding men to an unrealistic standard. So the thing they're accusing men of is having unrealistic standards for women. They're actually guilty of it. So I would argue that the female position on Korn setting unrealistic expectations for men is actually a projection of what our own romance novels is, because we know that deep down we know that it sets an unrealistic expectation. And so we, therefore, women are horrible at this, but we assume that because it's true for us, it is also must be true for men. And men's brains don't work like that. Once the visual goes away, it flees their mind. That penguin falls off the iceberg and gets eaten, and it doesn't matter anymore. Women, however, will read something once, like whatever their earliest romance novel is, and that's the kind of man they want. And
well, that goes back to the Disney thing, right? They say at 5 years old, they see Prince Charming and assume every man should be Prince Charming. And it just builds, as they get into the more graphic stuff, it just builds on that. And again, you talk about the TV shows. We're inundated. You see it in commercials even to a certain extent. It's this constant creation of the ideal man, and it has corrupted women at this point. All you can do is go on Insta or TikTok in particular, those two, right? I don't see it so much on YouTube, but Insta or TikTok, it's infested with women with these expectations. And guys are looking at this going, "You're freaking insane," right? And you've done videos on it. I've done videos on it. The 6 feet, 6-pack abs, 6-figure income, blah, blah, blah. There's less than 10,000 of them in the entire United States. Half of them are already taken or married. Half of the remaining half are gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that. So in reality, there's 75 million women trying to get 2,000 guys. The math ain't mathing. And any guy that doesn't measure up to that is no good. I mean, the logic behind it. If a guy is 6 foot, he's acceptable. If he's 5'11" and 7/8, he's not even a valid human being. And they hold to that. And it is ludicrous to me. But that it goes right to that double standard. And people don't like talking about it. And that's the problem. All right, we're going to morph it again. We're going to really piss people off next. But before we do, hold on one second. Whoop, wrong one. Show us the love. Do your thing, Lindsay. While I'm stall for me here. All right, we're an hour or so in, maybe a little bit longer. If you're enjoying the show, if you agree with us or don't, give us a little heart. Do the thing. You can do that better than I can. Feel free to share this. Put your comments in. We are reading the comments, although we haven't read too many online right now, mostly because some of them we can't. Not that we disagree with you, but we have to be careful what we show and say, because they will come for us. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous to me. It was funny when I was filming that video, which I did, I don't know, a week and a half or so ago. That's, out on YouTube and stuff. I had to be very careful saying corn, which is ludicrous to me, right? Now, to be honest with you, YouTube you can get away with saying the P word, within the right context. They will, and they are actually suppressing that video, but they won't take it down. TikTok absolutely will if you use the P word. Insta app or Meta absolutely will if you use the P word. And it just shows you how ridiculous it is. So that's why we have to use code words. That's why you'll hear us say essay instead of or grape instead of it's asinine to me. And along those lines, all right, we're going to step in it, Lindsay. You ready?
I'm ready.
We are going to catch so much shit from at least half the audience. We're going to talk about another double standard, which is a video I did about a week ago where we were talking about a certain group of, or I was talking about a certain group of files that were released, like 3 million documents worth. And the absolute freaking double standard that is being shown with regard to that. Because I don't know, I mean, I went down the rabbit hole a little bit in the last couple of weeks with social media, mostly Insta, but TikTok as well. The number of women making videos just blasting men, all men, for certain names being in those files. And I didn't want to get into the names, all right, because it's who cares, right? There's names on both sides, so just stop already, right? This isn't about the politics of it. Just blasting, and it's all men. It's all men till it's no men. Video after video after video on it. And I know the algorithms will start feeding them to you, but I mean, this was like relentless. And if you actually go and search for it, they'll give you hundreds and hundreds of videos. And yet, when you look at the files, and I've read, obviously not 3 million, but a good number of them, and I've also, looked at some other stuff, there are an awful lot of women named in them. And you're not hearing a peep about it. And oh, by the way, there is one person that has been convicted. And it's not even Jeffy. It's Delane. It's the woman. The only person that's been convicted so far is a woman. How about we acknowledge that, ladies? Right? If you're going to blast the men, by the way, I am a card-carrying member of the Wood Chipper Club. Okay? If they're found guilty, wood chipper. Trot it out. I have zero sympathy for them. But the fact of the matter is there's one person so far that's been convicted, and it happens to be a female, and the women will not acknowledge that.
Ironically enough, so this file talks about, or these mini files are another iteration of something that I am unfortunately intimately familiar with, given the geographical location that I live in, and that is human trafficking. Did you know
I am too.
that many, many, many of the most prolific human traffickers are all women? Because women trust women and children trust women. So if a woman approaches a child and then takes their hand and walks out with them, the child is more likely to trust that woman than a man. And I've gone to the store before, and I remember I had both of my children, and one of my children was not behaving, and I had a woman angling across the parking lot to get between me and my kid. I screamed my kid's name so fast, I yanked him by the back of his sweater, probably scared the crap out of him. Picked both my children up, didn't even put them in their car seat, threw them in the car, locked the doors. Because I know the statistics on that. I've been at the checkout line at a grocery store and had a woman offer, "Let me hold your child." No, I will struggle with my wallet. I will give you my keys, my wallet, and my phone before I hand you my child. And when I've been out, I don't really go to clubs at all, but the few times I've been out to watch a concert or something, I always want Mr. Squirrel to go with me and stand outside the bathroom because I know what happens inside of them. And so to sit there and pretend that the predators you need to watch out for are men, no, women help them. They always have always helped them. They've always provided, you know, in many cases, it's we're going to throw other women out of the under the bus so that we're spared. And these files are just another iteration of that. The number of women's names in them, and then we sit there and pretend that we're oh, we would never do that, honey. Yes, you would. And you've been doing it for centuries. This is nothing. This is not new behavior. This is not new behavior. Women have been doing this to other women for centuries. And children for centuries. So to sit there and pretend like, you know, men are the ultimate predators, no, this goes back to that domestic violence thing that I did a couple of weeks ago, is violence is a human problem.
Well, I mean, I don't know the exact number, but somewhere between 5 and 10 times on either radio or a different show that I did, we interviewed police officers. Some were sheriffs, some were deputies, some were city police. And I'm talking just in North Carolina, where I am now, right? Which the I-95 corridor is the biggest trafficking, right? Fayetteville, North Carolina is a huge hub for it. All right. Every single one of them said that women are as guilty, and some said more, right? And the point is, we're not trying to lay the blame on women here. What we're saying is there's a double standard going on here, because while we'll, you know, blast every guy that's in those files and label all men as potential P3DOs, they will not say the same thing applies to women. Yet the data, the facts, reality show the exact opposite, right? To me, it's not of who's worse, because I do think it's probably about the same, male, female. If someone actually sat down and truly, honestly studied it, it's probably about the same, right? You're going to see higher in certain things, lower, but it's essentially going to come out about the same. And someone, well, if it's 48-52, it's not the same. Yes, it is. Okay, we're talking statistics here. And so when you see that, and you see millions upon millions of women, the media, the news media, isn't covering it the way they should, right? They're mentioning all the big names. Again, I don't want to throw the names out there because it's immaterial to our discussion right now, and it'll just lead us into politics. I don't want to go there, right? They'll list name after name when it comes to the men. I have yet to see either side, by the way, Fox, CNN, because I went looking before I did my video. Fox, CNN, NBC, MSNBC, or whatever the hell it is called now. One Nation, a whole bunch of them. Not one of them mentioned the women. And if the few times they did mention a woman, it was Maxwell, and that was the only one. Yet, as I listed in my video, I picked, I think, 5 women, fairly prominent ones, and mentioned them, and they're in those files, right? Not a peep. And I had people commenting to me, I never heard of these women. Oh, gee, why? You know? And again, we're getting back to, this is a horrific, horrific thing. I think there's a huge cover-up going on, right? I say it's both sides. I don't want to hear it's one side over the other. I don't want to hear the blame game being played. It's immaterial to me, right? It is mostly, not all, but mostly female victims. And they deserve justice. And I hope they get it eventually. But to sit there and say, this is proof that all men are dangerous, and to not acknowledge that women are every bit as much, is disingenuous at best and a flat out lie at worst.
It's also dangerous to the people that they're claiming to protect. So they always parrot that men are dangerous in order to try and protect women.
But instill fear in them is what it really
they instill fear in them. But with the human trafficking things that I've experienced, and of course I've seen the statistics. I've talked to women who have been human trafficked, because I live right along the I-10 corridor. That's west to east, east to west. And by focusing entirely on men as the ones you need to be afraid of, they blind them to the other side of that danger algorithm. And so they're so focused on being afraid of men that they put all their trust in women, and then they end up trafficked or taken advantage of. Or
And that's why the women are, I hate to put it this way, successful at it, if you catch my drift, right? Because the trust is inherently there. You know, and again, I've talked with multiple police officers at every level except federal. I've never talked to like an FBI agent about it, but I've talked to state police, sheriff, city, all of that. They say that's exactly why the women are engaged so much, because there's an inherent trust there, right? Especially for young teenage girls and young teenage boys. You know, the other thing about like that type of thing is everybody thinks of it in terms of SA. I'll use that term, right? People don't understand that young teenage boys are being trafficked in huge numbers to go work on farms. That's what's happening here along the I-95 corridor. I am aware of one. It never made the news, but they busted a farm where there were dozens of young boys being kept as laborers. And it never made the news. I mean, I know the sheriff told me about it, right? I mean, why would he lie to me about it, right? And he talked about it on air. And it's just like, again, our point, Lindsay's and mine, is not to excuse anything by anybody. It's to say we need to hold everybody accountable equally. You know, whatever you think about the Epstein files, I have my opinion. I know Lindsay's got hers. We're probably pretty much in alignment on that. But I would also caution that just because a name is in there doesn't mean they're guilty of anything. Do I think some are? Absolutely, I do. Right. And I'm not going to name names because it's immaterial. But do I think there's a lot of names in there that aren't? Absolutely. You know, and it's like I said at the beginning of this particular part of the conversation, if they're guilty, bring out the wood chippers, line them up, bring them out. Let's do it. Right. But if they're innocent, let's not destroy them simply because their name happens to be in the files, male or female. Right. There needs to be some semblance of sanity with it. Will there be? I don't think there will be. There's too much of a cover up going on. But let's not use this, which is what's happening, to bash men. Again, this is all about creating that double standard. Men are all a threat to women, but women aren't a threat to anybody. Bullshit.
well, we're back to I would argue that the idea that women can't be dangerous is inherently misogynistic, because why are we considered not dangerous? Because we're female, because we're weaker, we're smaller than men. Okay, the mosquito is the most dangerous animal in the world, and it's about this big. Malaria has killed more people than anything else. Bacteria are
Bacteria and
microscopic.
viruses kill everybody.
They kill everybody, and they're microscopic. So size is not a prediction or predicator of the ability to cause harm. And ironically enough, when I was growing up, the idea of go find a mom, go find a mother with small children, go find that to protect you. My dad told me to go find a guy.
Guys would be very protective. That's the thing. Right?
I've seen it played out in real life. I saw a little girl. She lost her mother, and she walked up to this random guy in I think it was J.C. Penney's, a big biker, and he proceeded to scare to death anyone who tried to take her away from him, until he walked with her to the mall office until her mother came to come get her. Turns out her dad was about roughly this man's shape and size, so it shows that she felt safe with her dad because she went and found someone who looked like him. But this idea that mothers or women specifically are more protective of children, I argue that's not true. I argue that men in many cases are just as protective can be just as protective.
Oh, without question.
Without question. I mean, because you also have to think about what men choose by and large all of the protective roles. They choose military is predominantly men, police officers is predominantly men, first responders, EMTs are predominantly men. So the misconception that women are inherently safe because we're women and men are inherently dangerous because they're men is like the biggest double standard. And it's dangerous. It's a dangerous double standard.
And yet the women will argue that it's men's job to be protective and then vilify us for being that way. You know, it was funny because as you were just talking about that, and I think we talked about this when you were here and we went to the beach. You go to the beach, right? And I spend a lot of time at the beach, especially in the spring, summer, and fall. Women are like this with their phones. Men are looking around. And I'm guilty of this, right? I get frustrated at the beach because I end up having to be a lifeguard. And yes, there are lifeguards on duty, but the number of young parents with young kids who they're so engrossed in their phone, they have no idea where their kid is. And you know, if you don't live in the area, you may not be aware of something called a riptide. A riptide can pull you because I was in one about 5 years ago, and it pulled me from about 10 feet offshore to about 300 yards offshore, like that. Now, and my wife, by the way, my wife is not the best of swimmers, right? We got in okay because I made sure she got in. But if that happened to, say, a 4-year-old boy or girl, that kid is dead because you're not going to get to them fast enough. And yet, the mothers, especially the mothers, got their face stuck in a phone. You're at a freaking beach on vacation. Get your ass off the phone, first of all.
And
take care of your children, second of all. And hello, if you look around, the men are the ones watching, not the women.
Well, it's not just their phones. I mean, the current iteration of mothers, it's their phones. But when I was growing up, it was always a mother with a book.
Or a book. Yeah. You know, it's Aaron made a comment a little bit ago where he said fleas are dangerous because you were talking about size.
Mm-hmm.
What was the Black Plague? 50% of Europe got wiped out. It was fleas that brought it. Fleas. Fleas killed more human beings than men will ever kill, right? You know, again, I want to make the point again because we have to, because you know they're going to clip us. Mr. Clippy will get going, although I think he kind of disappeared.
He did kind of disappear.
Well, it might have to do with the fact that I had 2 women come to me about him. But anyway, that's a whole other show. He's not the innocent person you think he is. We need to do a show on that, Lindsay, by the way.
The panda bears who say, I'm the good man, and they always end up being the predators.
There is one on Facebook, and I'm not going to name names right now. This guy is so obviously a predator. Every guy is seeing it. And the women are lapping him up like he's.
I wonder if it's the same one that I
And this guy is 100% guilty of grooming women. There is no doubt. Every guy is seeing it. Every guy. We're in the comments all the time. Ladies, wake the up. You know, and it's not hard to do. You tell women what they want to hear, they'll lap it right up like kittens on a saucer of milk. Dangerous, and guys spot that. And I also argue, by the way, that women are the best ones to spot bad women, right? I always tell guys, get a friend who's a female and have her analyze the woman you want to date. Like, I would trust Lindsay's judgment more than mine if I were dating. I would say to Lindsay, check this chick out, let me know. Because they know, right? Lindsay, you know this. But anyway, I do want to get through a couple of comments because we haven't really read any. We only got about 5 minutes. So I mentioned Aaron's, but there was another one. If you've got one, Lindsay, go ahead.
No, I mean, there was a couple back when they're talking about the parenting. I addressed those, the ones that sit there and say that it was about presence.
I did that one, yeah. And I'm like, I've scrolled way back. It's like, this is why we need Curtis. Just bear with us, guys.
So there's one woman who said, you think it's okay to never spend time with your children? Like I'm saying, he was gone from 3 p.m. until 11 p.m. After work, he was never home. And
what did she do to make sure he wasn't there?
Well, not only that, but like, what was he doing? Like, my dad, for example, was an auto mechanic, and he would leave 6:30 every morning. He'd be there at 7. He'd come home, 6:30 or so. My dad is crawling around, underneath cars constantly, because I used to love going to the dealership with him and sitting back there and playing with engine parts. My dad would come home and he's exhausted. The number of times he fell asleep right after dinner are very high, because he had a physically demanding job. But like the linemen, I know guys that are linemen. That's a physically demanding job. Like roofers,
What's what happens to a roofer when they get off work in the summer, when they've been on a roof at 95-degree, hazy, hot, and humid? That roof's 120. They don't come home and clean the house. They can't.
Commercial HVAC techs in Texas. Anyone outside working in Texas. Like, what is he doing? Is my first thing. See, I try real hard not to jump to attribute maliciousness where there is no, or like attribute malice or assume malice where there is no malice. And my first question when that comes up is, well, what does he do? Is he in a physically demanding job? Because if he comes home and he face plants, or he eats dinner and then face plants, just so that he could wake up the next morning and do it all over again, I'm going to be far more sympathetic to that than, if he's truly absent. Of course, again, if he is truly that absent, we're not talking about that. We're talking about...
I get to a different conclusion than you, because I argue that if he's not coming home, he doesn't feel like there's peace there. He doesn't feel safe there. So he's avoiding it. And I will tell you, when you talk to guys, you'll hear that a lot. I mean, a lot.
Because that's also the reason why men will sit in their car for an hour, or go hide in the garage. A woman will come out. I watched a video the other day. The same guy, so it's the same woman in the video, and she was doing a video where her husband is sitting down, and she's like, I don't know what it is about this man sitting down that just like gives me the ick, like get up and go clean something. And then I'm like, I could say the same thing about you, princess. But then a couple videos later, she goes out and he's hiding in the garage. And I can think to myself, I can understand why he's hiding in the garage, because if he sits down inside the house, she wants him to get up and clean something.
Or she's going to blast him.
Yeah.
If you want to know why your husband or boyfriend is spending so much time in the bathroom, the answer is you. Sorry. Angel mentioned that men are designed to be protective. He didn't spell it right, but it's in our DNA, or designed to protect, I should say. It's in our DNA. It absolutely is, right? That it is inherent in us to be protective. And rather than embrace that, rather than acknowledge it, women try to weaponize it, right? Because they're twisting protective into abusive, whereas they won't do the same for themselves. And that is inherently the problem. And it's all designed to create fear in women. Understand that this whole dynamic goes back to feminism. And feminism's main goal is to control women, control how they think, control what they do, control what they say. That is an absolute fact. And the best way to do that, because it is a cult, is to create the boogeyman. And feminism has created the boogeyman, which is men. Because then, if you're afraid of men and you are looking for help or protection, who are you going to turn to? You're going to turn to the cult. Go read books about cults, not necessarily a particular cult, but cults in general. And I've done several books on that. And when you read them and they list the criteria, feminism hits every single one without exception. It is absolutely a cult. And it's sad because it's hurting women. And, we talked about this in terms of double standards. Is it hurting men? Just kind of put a bow on this. Yes, double standards hurt men. My argument is it hurts women more. And you're seeing it now because women are struggling. I say it often in videos. 50% of women right now in the United States are on SSRIs or being treated for mental health issues. I don't say that as a flex at all. I think it's heartbreaking that they've reached this point. Men are nowhere near that. And it's at every age group, every single age group. And that is sad. And it all goes back to the feminism movement that started in the 70s. It is what it is. So that's why my main argument to close it all out is double standards that exist against men actually are harming women more than they are men. All right, Lindsay, I'll give you the final word before we wrap things up.
All right, guys, this was our show. We'll be back next week. And
I hit the button and you went finish it. Sorry.
bye.
I hit the wrong button. All right, there we go.